Depression is so much more than just a feeling. It's a really complex condition, and it has these deep, deep biological roots. So in this explainer, we're going to get right into the science of what's called Major Depressive Disorder, or MDD, and really explore what's actually happening inside the brain. And it's so crucial that we understand this, because as this quote makes tragically clear, the stakes are incredibly high. To really get a handle on this, we have to look past the symptoms and dive straight into the biology. We've got to get under the hood. All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the basics. What is MDD? Then we'll walk through the symptoms, look at where it comes from, genes and stress. Then we'll dive deep into the brain chemistry before tying it all together with treatment. Let's get into it. So first up, before we can even touch the biology, we need to be on the same page. What exactly is major depressive disorder? What makes it major? Okay, so here's the key distinction, especially when you think about something like bipolar disorder. What sets MDD apart is very specific. It's defined by having those major depressive episodes without any history of mania or hypomania. It's that persistent low without the energetic highs. And believe me, its impact is anything but minor. It's what we call a pervasive condition because it worms its way into every single corner of a person's life. Your mood, your physical health, your job, even your closest relationships. So what does that toll actually look like for the person experiencing it? Well, the symptoms of MDD are super broad, and we can kind of group them into three main buckets: the emotional, the physical, and the cognitive. Emotionally, oh man, it is so much more than just feeling sad. A core symptom is something called anhedonia, and that's the inability to feel any pleasure from things you used to love. It's often paired with this deep, unshakable feeling of hopelessness. And in really severe cases, it can even include auditory hallucinations that just reinforce all those negative thoughts. And it's not just in your head. The body absolutely carries the weight of this disorder. We see these profound physical symptoms, from a fatigue so deep that no amount of sleep can fix it, to huge shifts in sleep patterns and appetite. It's just such a clear sign of that powerful, powerful connection between the mind and the body. And then you have the cognitive side of it, which, honestly, brain fog is the best way to describe it. Simple, everyday mental tasks, like just focusing on a conversation or trying to decide what you want to eat for lunch, can suddenly feel like climbing a mountain. So this brings us to the million-dollar question, right? Where does all this come from? Well, it turns out there's no single easy answer. Instead, all the research points to this really powerful combination of nature and nurture, our genes and our life stress. And the genetic link is just undeniable. Get this. If your parent, your sibling, or your child has MDD, your own risk of developing it is 2 to 4 times higher than someone else's. That is a huge statistical jump, and it shows you just how big a role our DNA can play. But genes are only part of the story. It's this interplay, this dance between a genetic vulnerability and psychological stress that so often seems to pull the trigger. Think of it like this. Your genetics might load the gun, but it's often a major life stressor that fires it. A sudden event can spark it, and chronic, long-term stress can make it worse and harder to shake. Okay, now let's put on our lab coats and zoom way in, right down to the microscopic level of the brain. The first and maybe most famous theory for explaining the biology of depression is what's called the amine hypothesis. So at its core, this is the chemical imbalance theory you've probably heard about. It suggests that MDD is caused by a shortage of these key chemical messengers in the brain, specifically serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. These are the little molecules that help regulate basically everything, from our mood to our sleep to our motivation. Now, to see where things go wrong, we have to see how it's supposed to work. In a healthy brain, your neurons are constantly talking to each other across this tiny little gap called a synapse. One neuron releases these neurotransmitters, they float across, and they lock into the next neuron to pass on the message. Then any leftovers get cleaned up. It's a beautiful, efficient little system. But according to this hypothesis, here's the glitch in MDD. There just aren't enough of those neurotransmitters floating around in the gap. With fewer messengers to carry the signal, the communication gets weak or garbled. And that breakdown is thought to be a major reason for those depressive symptoms. But as is always the case with the brain, the story is a bit more complicated than just a simple chemical shortage. See, more recent science shows that the way the brain tries to fix this problem is also a critical part of the puzzle. The plot thickens. And this brings us to the receptor hypothesis. So imagine you're trying to listen to a song on the radio, but the signal's really, really faint. What do? You crank the volume knob all the way up, right? Well, the brain does something just like that. When it senses a weak signal from low neurotransmitters, it starts building more receptors and making them extra sensitive to try and catch whatever message it can. This is called upregulation. The irony is, this attempt to help can actually make the whole system unstable and dysfunctional. And the picture gets even bigger. It's not just about neurotransmitters anymore. We now see lower levels of something called BDNF, which is like miracle grow for your brain cells. It helps them grow and connect. At the same time, we see an increase in inflammatory markers, suggesting the body is in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation. And on top of that, the HPA axis, the body's central stress response system, gets stuck in the on position. It all points to a much more system-wide problem.
Okay, so why does all this intricate, deep dive biology matter? Well, it's not just an academic exercise. This is the very foundation, the roadmap for how modern treatments for major depressive disorder are actually built.
This biological roadmap is exactly what treatments are designed to target. Most antidepressants work by increasing those neurotransmitters in the synapse, tackling the amine hypothesis head-on. Then, over time, this allows those oversensitive receptors to finally calm down and downregulate, which helps restore balance. And what's really fascinating is that these same medications also seem to help with those other issues. They boost that brain fertilizer BDNF, they can lower inflammation, and they help get that haywire stress response back under control. Which brings us to a final, forward-looking thought. The science here has evolved so much. From a simple chemical imbalance idea to this much richer, more complex understanding of an entire brain network. And as we keep unraveling this incredible intricacy, it just leaves you wondering, what new, even more effective and personalized therapies are waiting for us just over the horizon?